Working remote from home, it's the new way to work. IT teams are lean and available budget is in many times scarce. So today we have two stories that we wanted to share with you where our team helped create a unique plan B solution that they couldn't get elsewhere from their other channels or their other VARs. So the first story I've got today, it's one of our existing customers, which this project was the first project that we worked on with. They're a large global software company that has been aggressively acquiring other companies. Couple challenges that they had. Most of these acquisitions were for companies that have a completely different network landscape. And most of these companies had multiple offices around the world. Standardization of the network was a top priority. They had a lean team, and COVID created havoc on international travel to configure and deploy these network rip and replace projects. Most of the equipment was being hit with the supply chain issues. So most of the hardware that they did receive was sitting on the network team's kitchen tables, as they weren't allowed back in the office yet. What did we propose? Our proposition was simple. Send everything to us, let us stage it, ship it, and deploy it. Simple, right? There's a lot that went into that, and no one else came up with these options. So Al has a couple things here, so I'll probably go high level, but Al, feel free to interrupt me at any time. So the first thing we had to do, whatever equipment they had, we just said, just ship it to us. We don't care where you bought it, whatever type of hardware it was, just send it to us. So we sent it to Al's team there in Portland, which is where our primary US staging facility is. So they sent us all their Palo Alto firewalls and their Nimble storage arrays. They were still waiting on all their Cisco network infrastructure, and they were still waiting on all their Dell servers, and there was no end in sight on when that equipment was going to arrive. So our sourcing team on this particular project found all of their Cisco equipment and all of those Dell servers, and have found it within 7 days where they could have it all there, which simplified, obviously, when you talk about staging. Al, talk a little bit about staging and kind of how you set that up for this customer.
Sure. Yeah, this was a cool one too, because we had multiple different OEMs involved. The customer had already secured the Palo Alto security devices. The Nimble storage was on the way, and then, like Joe mentioned, we were able to secure the Dell servers and then all of the Cisco infrastructure, so the switches and then all the wireless. And so typically the way that this would work is everything gets centralized here at our distribution center up in Oregon, and we work directly with the customer on building the network diagram if that hasn't already been created on their end. And then yep, there's an example there for this particular project. And then we determine the next step would be getting the cabling matrix, and so identifying exactly how they want each device cabled, which ports they're connected to, and then we proceed with racking all the equipment, cabling it up to match their network diagram and their cabling matrix, and then we give them secure VPN remote access to configure the equipment themselves. Some of these configurations are proprietary, and so we give that back to the customer and let them configure it at their own leisure. Sometimes engineers aren't in the same time zone, they're in different countries. And so we basically can leave this equipment hooked up 24 hours a day. The customer can remote in, configure it, while we're sleeping, over the weekend, whatever works for their timeline. And then once everything is confirmed good to go, we label everything, whether it's giving the hardware specific system names. We label all the cables so that when it arrives on site, it's plug and play. And for this particular project, we took everything down, boxed it up, staged it on a pallet, and then had it shipped to Australia, where it was completely hands-off for the customer, what we call a white glove service. So we exported it out of the United States, had it imported on behalf of it into Australia, and then delivered directly to the customer site, where we had engineers waiting on site to receive the equipment, and then they basically did a full install that Saturday and Sunday. Had the site up and running, and engineers had their bags packed, and they were ready to fly out Sunday night. So really successful project. And you know, really the only time the customer got involved was to configure their own equipment, and we handled everything else. So that was really cool.
That is awesome. The one other thing which I hear a lot in customer, conversations that I have frequently, that logistics piece, and in this particular scenario, Al, your team handled full importation. So as a software company, they have no logistics. They didn't have a logistics team. They didn't know how to move the gear in there and who to answer questions and whatnot. And so you, being the Mr. Miyagi of international logistics, your team of ninjas on site, obviously you handled that white glove service, so that in all reality, the company, they didn't have to deal with anything getting it clear. And so I've seen lots of stories, which we only get to talk about, a couple today, but all the hard to reach countries, even easy countries or whatnot, basically solving that piece for these organizations that don't have lots of experience in shipping international, and how to make sure your stuff doesn't get stuck. And then you had a team on site. So there was a lot of huge wins here that I know that were huge pain points, which falls in line of what makes you the sensei of international logistics.